Really appreciate everyone's time, energy, and effort to be here. I'm really excited to have Ben Myers on. Ben, we haven't spoken in a little while. Can you tell me first and foremost how you doing and what you've been working on since last July?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think we talked at the start of the pandemic, and if you go back and
Yeah.
look at my hairdo in that video compared to my hair in this video, it's a little bit a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, when the pandemic hit, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go bankrupt. No one's going to be launching sites. No one's going to be buying real estate. But yeah, I mean, obviously that has changed, and so I do work with Baker Real Estate. I always put up the wrong hand. Baker Real Estate's and helping them underwrite a number of deals that are coming through, and also my typical bullpen consulting work, which is typically high rise condo studies. Kind of getting into the weeds on everything that's involved in a project, but also doing a lot of rental studies. So a lot of developers are looking at rental as well. So kind of splitting my time doing those two things, and doing some work for lenders and landowners, and trying to help them through the process. So things are still going strong, and developers looking at sites, developers launching sites, a lot of successful sites. Certainly way more successful than I anticipated when the pandemic started, and pricing continued to go up, especially in the suburbs, as I'm sure you saw my email that went out this week about new condo price growth in the suburbs. So very interesting happenings over the last 15 months.
Okay, amazing. A lot of things to unpack there. So Baker Real Estate, they recently came out with the Brightwater development. Brightwater is in Port Credit, Mississauga. It's a really special site that I guess a lot of people have been waiting for. And they came out at about 1,200 per square foot, which is like really cool. How does that compare to stuff in Mississauga at 1,200 a square foot? Because
I
a
mean,
lot of people, they blink and they're like thinking 1,200 square foot's downtown, but that may be downtown 2 years ago,
yeah,
3 years
interesting.
ago.
I mean, they had asked me to do a study, and I didn't come out at, at 1,200 for that site, but I understand where they're coming from, right? They can only build so many units in that community for the planning, right? So some of the buildings are going to be small, very boutique. I mean, Port Credit is one of the most desirable communities that's outside the city of Toronto. And again, I'm a research guy. I try not to be too too salesy, but Port Credit is an amazing community, right? And the community and the Brightwater community is going to be just an unbelievable project. So in the Mississauga City Center, which is the other obviously area where you're seeing the most activity. The high rises there, are significantly larger. 3-4 times as large as the Mason project, right? And
In terms of the number of units,
yeah, and
not
then,
like the actual unit sizes.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In terms of the building size and the total number of units, so it's a little bit of a different offering. And yeah, they're in the $1,000 to $1,100 a square foot range. The recent projects that have come online, and a lot of the smaller units are well above $1,100 a square foot. So Mississauga has seen just absolutely enormous growth over the last 3 years. We're really looking at 15% annual growth over the last 3 years in Mississauga, and this is one of the prime sites that you're going to see in Mississauga. A better comparable than the Mississauga City Center is probably the Humber Bay Shores. I think what the waterfront buildings are getting in Humber Bay Shores, it's 1,200 to 1,350 a foot, right?
Resale Eau de Soleil, they're about that for sure.
Yeah, so the unsold inventory and the projects like Vita and the Cove, and I'm missing one off the top of my tongue. And again, these are the higher floor units, but yeah, I mean they're up above $1,300 a foot, and some of them as high as $1,500 a foot, right? So I've been in tracking the Toronto high-rise condo market for pretty tight detail for 16, 17 years, and I never would have anticipated that the Etobicoke waterfront would be seeing units sell at over $1,500 a square foot, but here we are, right? So interesting.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think is driving it?
I mean, it's
from purchasers' perspectives, it's I'm definitely seeing a huge demand for lakefront properties, lake views. I'm seeing that, and I see that it's not like Chinese investors buying, it's locals that are in the area that their homes are worth almost 1.5, 1.6 million, and they want, or in Lorne Park in Port Credit, their homes are worth over 2 million. And those are the people that are buying it. I mean, what are you seeing in the stats when you're underwriting deals for the builders on who's buying and where the buyers are coming from, where they're getting the money?
Yeah, we had just a little plug. We had Andrea Delzato on the Toronto Under Construction podcast, and we talked a little bit about the projects that they have on the waterfront, and the larger units that they've had a lot of success selling, and yeah, they've attracted people from all over Toronto. Especially affluent people from Forest Hill, Rosedale, Annex, that want to just change up their lifestyle, and they want to be on the water. If you look at the cost of waterfront properties in a lot of major U.S. cities, they're just absolutely enormous. They're way higher as a in a comparison basis to to a traditional downtown project, right? So, and again, just to get back to kind of your initial question, what's driving new condo prices? Well, it's probably three different things. Land prices are going up, and some of that is obviously a developer buys a property based on a residual value, but as each additional property gets sold, there's one less high density site for sale, right? So the supply of land at any one time is fairly small. Number two, obviously, is demand, right? There's strong demand in this city for housing, and some of that housing is going to be end user driven and lifestyle driven, and who doesn't want to be on the waterfront, have a waterfront view? It's an amazing thing when you have it. And number three is construction costs. I hear all the time, well, there's a set market for something, and developers have to go within that market, which isn't actually true, right? Developer has to run their numbers, and if it requires them to sell at $1,450 a foot, so they can either decide, I'm not going to buy that project, I'm not going to buy that land, I'm not going to go through the process, I'm not going to launch this project, or they're going to try and say, let's see if there's demand for these units at this pricing. And there has been. I continue to be surprised when I see Mount Joy selling at $950 a square foot in Markham, and I see projects that units selling at over $900 a square foot in Newmarket, or almost $800 a foot in Clarington. I mean, the costs are high, so there's a minimum price that you have to charge to make the project go, and sometimes you don't know what the market is. There's the reason I have a job is because people don't know what the market is, right? So I can give them I often give them a conservative number, and they say, Ben, I can't make any money at that number, right? I can't do anything at that number. What do you think if it's $50 per square foot higher? And sometimes I say, well, I think that's a deal breaker. Sometimes I think, well, your absorption will be slower, and sometimes I'm proven completely wrong as they go out at that number, and project sells out in 3 months, right? So it's not as much work as I do in the industry, and as much numbers that I look at, it's not as black and white as some people make it out to be.
For sure. And I think the builders get bullish because they're getting people registering, and if they're getting 30, 40 people registering versus like a Mount Joy or Brightwater, thousands of people registering, they're going to be getting a little bit more bullish in terms of pricing and testing the market at that higher pricing. I'm certain, you know.
Yeah, and then any smart developer is going to use their, is going to go through their brokerage, and their brokerage is going to reach out to guys like you, Brian, and say, hey, what do you think of this pricing? Do you think your investors would be interested at this, right? You've got to do your due diligence and get a sense of where the market is, right? And I mean, as an investor, you're looking out and seeing that the price of new condominiums has increased for, I think it is 26 consecutive years. So it's hard to, dissuade someone from paying a price, even though it might maybe 20% more than a recently completed resale or 25% more. It's hard to dissuade them because a lot of investors are long term, right? They're taking
Yeah,
your timeline, right? So if there is some fluctuations in the short term, they feel confident that their investment is going to go up in value over the course of their ownership, right? So
for sure.
it's
And taking a look at,
but one more point on that. When there is projects that are really, really overpriced, I think are bad deals, I find that investors tend to stay away from them when you see a slower absorption rate. So it's not that they're just buying anything that gets thrown out there at any price. People are doing their due diligence and trying to understand the individual markets and the upside and downside of those projects.
yeah, definitely. And we were talking about testing the market, online registrations. Let's take a little step back and tell us about your experience analyzing data from BuzzBuzz Home and what that tells you about demand and what you're seeing and how things are changing. So you actually looked at what floor plans people were clicking on and looking at the price per square foot of it. So it was like a really good idea of where demand is.
Yeah, exactly. It's so BuzzBuzz Home has this great data set that I purchased from them on a monthly basis that has the top floor plans that are being clicked on their website, and what the price is and the price per square foot, right? So I can aggregate that information on a municipal basis, on a postal code basis, even on a GTA basis. Here, in this chart that you shared the screen is what I sent out to my clients and people on my email distribution list, just basically looking at that data for the city of Toronto, the GTA suburbs, and then the greater Golden Horseshoe area that's outside the GTA, which has been a pretty strong market as well over the last 3 to 5 years. So what's great about it is people are not clicking on, as like a project will hit 80-85% sold, they'll get under construction, and the developer will set the pricing like $200 per square foot above the market, knowing that, they want to keep those units unsold just in case they have cost overruns. And a lot of them feel like, I'm going to hold these units until completion because I think they're going to show well at completion, and we'll sell these almost as resales. And some developers, they'll just actually hold a few of them and rent them out so that their tax burden shifts to another year, right? So there's some different reasons why a developer might, set the pricing that much higher. So I don't really want to include those in an analysis of what's happening in the market. So, people are not clicking on those because they're so, they're such high prices. Like they're clicking on the new stuff that's coming on the market, right? They're really getting a sense of where the market is trending. You can see the city of Toronto has been, somewhat flat over the last 6 months. The reason for that is, the downtown has been softer. So there's maybe a little less shine on the downtown market. Plus it went up, so much. Like if you look January of 2020, it was, $1,288 a square foot. And then it gets up to $1,400 by the end of 2020 in the middle of a pandemic, right? And if I went back, a year earlier, it would have shown another 10% increase in 2019 for the city of Toronto, right? So there's been some pretty high growth. And again, there hasn't been any Yorkville launches recently or real high-end launches that pull that number up, right? So we'll see, Menkes is coming out with a Yorkville launch pretty soon, so that will add to some of the high pricing. And really, some of the growth that we saw in 2019 and 2018 was we really, in my time covering the market, I don't think we've ever seen this many luxury projects on the market, right? In terms of, 1,500.
55 Scholar.
Yeah, 1,500,
Yeah.
2,500 square feet. There's just so many of these developments on the market right now. So we really, try. The market has really gone after that, super affluent move down buyer, right? So I think that's cooling a little bit I think we kind of we've satisfied that demand for now, right? So and then
Yeah, and taking a look at the price per square foot data downtown, the price per square foot is up, but the end price is relatively, what I'm seeing is staying the same because the unit sizes are getting smaller, under 400 square feet at 8 Wellesley. So that's going to be driving up the price per square foot. It doesn't necessarily mean end prices are going up. It just means construction costs are driving down unit sizes and eliminating outdoor space as well. What are some other trends that you're seeing besides unit sizes getting smaller and outdoor spaces in some downtown condo launches? I'm seeing it more and more common that outdoor spaces are no longer there.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I think at a certain price point, the balcony doesn't drive a lot of value because someone that's renting that space, if someone's renting 300 square feet or 350 square feet, a lot of times they're pretty price conscious and they just want to get into a new building with it's a prime location that has a lot of amenities, right? That's driving the rents on some of these super small units, and a lot of times they're being used by people that are just in town temporarily as well, right? So the balcony is not not key, but I think once you get above 550 square feet, I think you're going to need that for your resale value. Especially now with the pandemic, people are a little more conscious of their outdoor space. So we'll see. There's I lived in a unit that just had a Juliet balcony, and for me it was my first condo. It was just price point, right? I wanted to get in, and I wasn't as concerned about my outdoor space. If I wanted to go outside, I just went outside. I didn't need to sit on a balcony, and having worked at Yonge and Bloor and looked out on those buildings. But again, most of the time I'm there during the day, but looking out on those buildings, the only time I ever saw anyone out on their patio was to have a smoke.
Yeah.
So, there's I could see hundreds of units out from the window of my office, and there was never anyone out there other than having a smoke. So as much as people love the outdoor space, and they want the outdoor space, I think there's a difference between having a 30 square foot balcony that you can sit and read a book versus being able to put a table out there and actually have some friends over for a meal and some drinks, right? So again, it's hard. I mean, I've tried to isolate the value of a balcony in different studies that developers have asked for me, but there's just not enough good data to do it.
There's no apples comparison.
It's possible to get the apples to apples, right? To understand what someone is willing to pay for that additional space. And I've seen some surveys done, and I forget who did it that have done the surveys. And when you ask them, would you rather have that 50 extra square feet outdoor space or 50 indoor? A lot of people are choosing the 50 indoor if they're going to pay the same price. Right. So it's interesting. We'll see.
Yeah.
The trend continues.
I mean, it has to get more common on the resale market because there are a lot of resale condos with balconies and might be the similar price. So those amenities that 8 Wellesley has to be really good. And I think they did do a good amenity program, but I'm curious to see in 5-10 years if this trend continues with no balconies downtown, where it becomes more common, that we could get some good data on it. What's going on in Milton? Holy moly, 47% increase.
Again, you always have to be careful with small sample sizes. And a lot of the stuff that was being built in Milton before is kind of like the wood frame, low rise type project, right? And the market has gone up pretty significantly there, and their high-rise concrete projects are getting built, and it's driving up the price. So one of the recent projects that came out was, I think, 830, 840 per square foot, and it had previously been launched by another developer, and he just couldn't make the numbers work at what he had sold the project for. So he had to cancel the project and sold it to another developer, and they came out probably $200 per square foot higher than the previous, right? So really drove up the price. But I mean, the key is from that chart there is Vaughan, Richmond Hill, and Markham. The three markets that have the most activity. They're all up. Mississauga up 16%. Vaughan is up 14%. What was the other market? Oh yeah, I didn't put Richmond Hill on there. I did put Richmond Hill on there, but
yeah, it's 8%. But I think there hasn't been that many launches in Richmond.
I mean, the 8% is being driven by just existing price increases on the couple projects that are in the market right now, right? So it's not surprising that there hasn't been that many launches in Richmond Hill, but I think some of that is driven by higher fees for that municipality in comparison to Markham and Vaughan.
Look at Burlington, 900 square foot realm, and that's not even lakefront. That's near 401, or near the highway. Excuse me.
And Burlington, again, there wasn't much. Not much got launched in 2019 and 2020 in Burlington, and then Realm came out. If you compare that to Valera, that's like $200 per square foot higher than the same project by the same developer across the street, right, from where they launched that. I think Valera was out in 2018, so enormous growth, right? I mean, Oakville is low on the list, but the reason that Oakville saw a decline there is because there's this bifurcation of the market, right? You've got this $1,100 to $1,300 per square foot downtown Oakville market, these tiny boutique projects, and then you've got all the greenfield activity happening from Bronte to the Mississauga border, along Dundas, right? It's all kind of greenfield development projects, and they've gone from probably the start of 2020, this stuff was launching at $800 a foot. Now it's launching at $950, and I think Minto has a ton of units in their latest launch above $1,000 a square foot, right? So the huge growth in the Oakville kind of suburban market as well, right? So
do you see
captured here?
Do you see some issues, because it looks like the price per square foot of units that they're looking for in the Greater Golden Horseshoe is $717, and then we're seeing Barrie $633, but we're seeing Grimsby at $800 a foot, Burlington 900 square foot. $717 versus $900. That's a bit of a gap. I know this is just the general Golden Horseshoe area, and you're including like stick build, stuff build, and like other neighborhoods.
That's the thing. It has projects in there in Niagara Falls and St. Catharines that are they're stick built 3-story projects with above grade parking, and that's being merged in with I think the one Barrie project is like over 40 stories, the debut, right? It's like 8 something. And that was one of the, that really drove up the price. And then there's a couple projects that launched in Barrie on the water as well with pretty high pricing. And then Grimsby, again, they're the waterfront developments that are driving the price there. And it's, people from Oakville, Burlington, Hamilton, moving out to Grimsby to be on the waterfront and to pay, significantly less than what they would pay to live in those markets, right? So it's quite interesting. Waterloo, Kitchener, seeing big growth as well. And those were such slow markets for a long time. I still remember doing a study for I think it was Reed's Heritage Homes. I did a study maybe 10 years ago on the markets, and I said, I don't think the condo market's going to be here for 10 years. It was probably 5 more years, and the market took off, and now, you're getting pretty huge price growth there, right? And there's still, I still think it's pretty good value, at that $600 to $650 a square foot range in those two cities, right?
Yeah.
When I hate to disparage anyone's project, but when I see stuff selling in Clarington for, $800 a foot, and you can get stuff for $650 in Kitchener and Waterloo, it doesn't compute for me, right? I mean, Waterloo and Kitchener are cities with lots of jobs and lots of tenants and a lot of potential growth, right? Versus almost a bedroom community that's driven really just by being close to other things as opposed to being a true city with a strong employment base.
I mean, so we're seeing, like, for me, I'm seeing the reason why people are going out to Clarington and KW and Kitchener and Niagara Falls and Hamilton. It's because there's still strong demand from people. I know we talk about price per square foot a lot, but there's still strong demand for people that are looking for units in the 400,000s. Obviously, it's really difficult to get that in Toronto. I don't remember very many projects, unless the floor plan is really bad, that have come in that price. 905, I mean, we're seeing, like, in Mississauga, we're seeing that 1,200 square foot at the Mason. Getting in the 400s is going to be really difficult. Where do you see potential for people to invest money if they're looking in that price range? Because it looks like a lot of these areas have jumped up in prices huge. Is there another area where you're seeing consultants reach out to you and say, hey, we're thinking about putting a condo here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like markets that are cities, or at least if they're a suburb, that they have some type of walkability and have at least an area where someone can walk to a coffee shop, right? So I see some value in Aurora. We're going to get some projects close to the GO train station in Aurora. I think there's I don't know if you're going to be under 400. I think some of the smaller ones will, but I think there's value there because it's a fairly affluent suburb. It has some walkability, and there just hasn't been any activity there recently.
Yeah, no condos there. I think Newmarket had the last one in the area.
I mean, if Newmarket can it's selling units at $850 a foot, right? I think there's a lot of value in Aurora. I love Hamilton. I mean, I've always loved Hamilton. I think it's a fantastic city. It has so much room for growth. I love that one Jarvis project that came out by Emblem, sold out within, a month. Price was good. I think $730 a foot. I mean, I think that's tremendous value. If Realm is $930 and Hamilton is $730 downtown, I think that's some pretty good value there. So I like the Hamilton market. I'm intrigued by some of the other Niagara region projects, right? The St. Catharines is an interesting market. Like Port Dalhousie is a nice little spot there. They've had a couple projects on the water. They've been pretty expensive, but off of the water, you've got universities nearby. So there is some potential there. I don't think you're going to get the same price growth, but I do think that you may be able to be a little bit better on your cash flow in a market like that. And then what's interesting is Niagara Falls has seen a few launches recently that have done all right. And I know that the Times Group bought a site out there that they're going to launch soon. So it's kind of an interesting market if you want to get into the Airbnb space, right? Obviously, Niagara Falls is a huge tourist destination, and people may not want to stay in the hotels. Maybe they want a different experience. Maybe they want to stay longer. So it's an interesting idea to purchase a unit out there. So, but again, I'm from Guelph, so I'm very bullish on Guelph, Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge. I think they're undervalued when you compare them to the GTA. And then there's and again, I'm probably biased because I live close to Scarborough, and I like to think of myself as the king of Scarborough. I've literally touched 75% of the projects in terms of market studies. I think there's huge potential there as well as the city gets built up, as you see more projects pop up. There's a big project going beside the Guildwood GO train station. There's a big project going, at the where St. Clair merges with
Scarborough Junction. I like that one. Yeah.
Scarborough Junction area. So my buddy Matt Young, Republic Development, doing a massive project there with Harlow Capital. The Kennedy Go train station is an interesting site where there's the Kennedy Go and there's the subway. So Naheed Kennedy is going to be launching soon as well. So that's an interesting one to watch to see where they came out. And I was a little surprised that I-Core Developments launched a project beside the Scarborough City Center. It was at $890 a foot, which I thought was a pretty good value in comparison to where K Square was selling some of their units at the end of I think they sold out of all their small units, but they were selling units above $1,000 a square foot at the K Square project. So it does kind of stink that when they build the new LRT that people in the Scarborough City Center will have to take the bus for a while. So that is a little bit of a detraction for that site, just because you're not going to have the fast LRT for a little while. But if you're a long-term investor, you can see the value of Scarborough. So so interesting. There's some pockets of Scarborough that are really nice that people just don't know about. Like Highland Creek is a really, really nice area, especially if you like to go out and do some hiking and walk along the trails. That's a fantastic area. So the Project Perch launched. I think Crown Communities is launching a project out there as well. So there's a few coming up along Kingston Road that I think are going to be has pretty good value there at the somewhere between $800 and $900 a square feet. I think most of them are going to come in at that range, maybe a little bit over $900 a foot. So when you compare that to $1,500 a square foot downtown, when you can jump on a GO train 20 minutes and be downtown, there's definitely some value there.
Yeah, one of the issues that I know we talk about price per square foot a lot. One of the issues that I saw with Perch and Mandalay were the floor plans were really rough. And I'm seeing that's kind of common with those mid-rise buildings on Kingston Road. So we have to be mindful of the floor plan, not just the price per square foot. But I really like what you're saying.
I get caught up in that as well, right? I just look at the price per square foot and instead say, some are wide, shallow units that have, all this window space, or some of them are smaller buildings, so they have more corner units that are, highly desirable. And then another project could be in a weird location where it requires these, bowling alley style units with interior bedrooms that, not as appealing to a tenant or a retail buyer once they actually get inside and take a look at it, as opposed to someone just buying off a plan and saying, hey, that's an attractive price, right? So I get caught up in that all the time, right? With just concentrating on one number. I hardly ever look at the end selling price. all my studies are, okay, the range is 400,000 to 1.3 million, right? And then I get in the weeds on the price per square foot on the unit basis and all that stuff, right? So even I tend to completely ignore the end selling price sometimes.
But you actually raise a good point. We can't look at what are the upcoming areas. We have to look at the individual project and the individual units and how they compare to what's out there to find those good opportunities, because we're seeing that prices are appreciating all over kind of the map a bit.
Yeah, I mean costs are up everywhere, so pricing is up everywhere. I mean there really is no choice. I mean I talk about on the podcast all the time, right? Like developers can't build a project and make no money, or at least when they start getting their draws, right? No lenders taking on a project that's losing money. I mean, that's just, they don't lend money to those types of projects, right? So
yeah, excellent segue.
And because sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You said and costs.
I was just gonna say, because costs have been going up so rapidly, developers have been a little more aggressive on their pricing, because they want to build in a bigger revenue buffer than maybe they would have before. So, and sales have been pretty good, right? So it has allowed them to build in that buffer, right? If you look at some of the mid-rise projects that have launched, by Gairloch, by some others, they're comparable to downtown condo pricing, right? Because of the additional costs that go into building some of these smaller buildings. And they want to cover themselves, and they see value in the resale market of being in a smaller building that's not a 75 stories, right?
Yeah, That actually brings us, we kind of answered the question, but someone asked, what are you seeing about profit margins? Are you seeing that they're staying the same, getting bigger because prices are going up, but also costs are going up? What are you seeing with margins?
Yeah, I mean, that's hard. I typically don't ask my clients, like, how much money are you going to make on this deal, right? Occasionally if I run into a cost consultant, I'll ask them. But yeah, I mean, some of the existing projects that got caught kind of in the 2017, 2018 major increases, yeah, they're probably getting single digit returns, right? But I think for the most part, the developers are still aiming to make 15 to 20%, right? Return on their projects, right? So
Yeah.
Again, not my area of expertise, but there were times in 2011, 2012, the developers probably made 40, 50% return. We don't like to talk about that publicly too much because people get upset that developers are making so much money. But I think it's definitely tighter than it ever has been before, right?
And uncertain because of the costs.
I mean, there's when you're getting your supplies from overseas and and things are being held up and there's outbreaks of COVID in some of these places that are shutting down facilities. I mean, that's really what, in terms of the low-rise developers and lumber costs, right? When COVID hit and they shut down some of these plants and they said, a lot of the people that made orders for lumber said, well, pandemic, people aren't going to be building, people aren't going to be doing anything, right? So we're going to shut, we're not going to order as much stuff. And some of these mills, they let people go, right? And they went off and found new jobs, and it's just not easy to get someone that knows how to work in a lumber mill, right? So it's interesting how all these weird factors end up, costing housing at the end, right? So
yeah.
So always very interesting get the backstory on how the costs are going up and how it's impacting it's really impacting the end selling price that people are going to pay for condos.
Amazing. Ben, thanks so much for your time. To reach you, you have great research, bullpenconsulting.com, and to go to your blog, you have all these great reports. Holy moly. What was that?
bullpenconsulting.ca.
.ca. And you have your own podcast. And I can't wait to dig into the rental market, which we didn't really get to talk too much about. But if just quickly to close, what are you seeing with the rental market?
Yeah, so I'm just working on the June report for rentals.ca right now. Obviously, I can't give away any secrets, but rent is up again in June on a national basis. There seems to be a return downtown. People are trying to, kind of time the market. They anticipate that, the fall that they're going to be called back to their offices, and so they want to be back, downtown. I think anyone that's traveling downtown and seeing that the patios are jammed up again, there's activities, on the streets, there's activities in the park. I think that's only going to get people excited. I think people have been sitting, at home, not being able to go out and do things. They're going to be starved to be where the concerts are at, or where the bars are at, where the sporting events are at, and they're going to, and want to be involved in that stuff and want to be back downtown. So, I think we'll probably, my forecast that I've been saying to my clients is I think maybe 3 to 4% more rent growth by the end of the year from June to December. And then I'm calling for 12 to 14% rent growth next year. So I think when the borders open back up, the schools open back up, the temporary employment opens back up, I think Airbnb won't be as big of an issue because of the new rules, but there's always going to be people skirting the rules if there's demand. So we're going to see some of those units in the full-time market go back into the short-term market. So take some units out of the equation. There will be a decent amount of supply. I think we talked about it the last time that we're on like a 4-year lag from sales to completions. and 2017 was the highest year ever for new condo sales, 36,000 sales. So there's going to be a lot completed this year. So there will be a little bit more supply, but I anticipate the demand is just going to be huge, right? For new units. So.
Yeah, personally, I am seeing a lot of people from overseas that are itching to come here for getting their work visas as their gateway of getting their citizenship. Ben, thanks so much. Go to his website, bullpenconsultant.ca, sign up for the reports. You folks, guys and gals, have to read them. I'm really amazed. And Ben is, even though he's bullpen consulting, he's not exactly a real estate bull. I think I'm more of a bull than you. You're more data driven and you see things where they are. And I'm seeing the voracious appetite of people just eating real estate up. And I feel we're a good balance. You always balance me.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of people that are bullish on real estate, right? I mean, there's times where I look at the pricing and I get, I can't believe it, and I think that's certain projects are overvalued, or I think the developers being overly aggressive in certain areas. And yeah, I mean, obviously the rent went down 25% in 2020, so they cut into a lot of investors' returns. So, but I think as we've discussed, that there's a lot of long-term investors in our marketplace, right? The 2011 where there's mom and pops buying 3 or 4 units and trying to assign them all before they close. I think we're just not seeing as much of that going on as we did. And maybe you have a different opinion, but I certainly don't hear from my clients that there's 20% of people trying to assign the units before the building is complete. So that's obviously a positive thing and what we want to see out of the investors in our market.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not seeing that as well. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for coming on. Really appreciate your time. Ben, see you later.
Take care.
I got my hair cut. You got to get yours.
Yeah, I'm trying to make an appointment, but.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks so much.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Bye-bye.